October serves as Pregnancy and Early Infant Loss Awareness Month. Today I'll be discussing the implications of miscarriage grief and explore why this grief is so different than other types of grief. October 15th holds a special significance in the hearts and the homes of lost families, so be sure to watch to the end when I explain how you can participate in the Wave of Light. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you'll know when I post again about the heartbreak of stillbirth in my next video. Our goal in this community is to do grief differently. Hi, my name is Jo McRogers and I'm a stillbirth doula and a therapist. I have had the honor of sitting in hundreds and probably thousands of hours of support to women and families who have experienced miscarriage. Today I'm going to be offering my thoughts on why processing the grief from a miscarriage is so challenging. Miscarriage is a medical term used to define the loss of a pregnancy prior to 20 weeks gestation. So why is this loss so devastating when it's such an early loss? Some people would say, but you didn't even know the baby. This is a myth. What is important to consider here is the fact that the love for a baby does not begin at birth. Love of a baby begins probably even before the pregnancy occurs, where family planning has happened, where perhaps fertility treatments have been used. And so many women that I sit with tell me that they have known from a very early age that they just can't wait to become a mother. This early love of the baby then follows into the pregnancy, holding hopes and dreams and wonder for both the moment and for the future. Because of this, the depth of loss cannot be measured by weeks. A loss at 3 weeks can be experienced as the same loss as one that occurs at 23 weeks. The bonding process had begun, and a miscarriage means that the loss of both the future and the loss of the relationship with that baby is now lost. The grief of this loss is not measured by a number, but more so measured in a heart through hopes and dreams. Grief is grief, and your own grief is your own worst grief. Anger, sadness, devastation, anxiety, depression, guilt, fear, hypervigilance, and the big question of why, with a quest to understand, are all commonly experienced emotions. I've sat with women who range from, I want to be pregnant again right now, all the way over to women who say, I am so sad and so scared, I may never try to become pregnant again. Miscarriage asks us to normalize all of these emotions. It's also important to recognize for the mother that no one else can know your own unique grief. While others may have shared in the joy emotionally, mentally, spiritually, religiously, or culturally in the pregnancy, you were also the only one that had the physicality of the pregnancy. This means that your miscarriage is also going to bring you the unique loss of the physicality. For these reasons, your response to your grief needs to be your own. Others may not understand the depth of your grief, but they do need to respect it in order to support you. You were the only one that had that physical bond with that baby. When a loss comes from a miscarriage, sometimes the news of the pregnancy hasn't yet been shared with circles of friends, family, or colleagues. This puts a family that experienced a miscarriage in a particularly difficult place of how to grieve an unknown, unrecognized loss and how to garner support for an invisible grief. How do you go to work and pretend that everything is fine because you haven't told your employer and your colleagues that you were pregnant? How do you tell family and friends that, well, yes, I was pregnant, but I no longer am? How do you make that double announcement? It's so challenging. These challenges then reinforce an increased sense of silence, isolation, and despair. And one of the biggest risks is to grieve through the myth that this is so sad that it should not be spoken about. I call this when the unthinkable becomes the unspeakable. When the statistics tell us that 1 in 4 pregnancies will result in loss, what is clearly needed is a groundswell of support so that this loss can become seen, supported, and spoken of. This is part of the reason why the Wave of Light was begun years ago. Your grief will be unique to yourself, so please allow your response to also be unique. Experiment, research, and find what works for you. This grief from a miscarriage will require an open mind, some creativity, and willingness to take risks. I have chosen to challenge the silence of silent loss. Sometimes silence speaks to privacy, but sometimes silence speaks to shame and guilt and secrets. And none of those serve the grief of a miscarriage. I also know that silence can be very harmful. If you have experienced a miscarriage, I would be ever so grateful for you to share a comment in our community down below. If you could let us know what was most helpful for you to process your grief. You're also invited to tell us what was least helpful. Educate me, help me do more work in order to myth bust and in order to eliminate the silence from silent loss. One of the primary tasks of grief is to find a way to honor the loss. And grief generally involves somebody that you've had a living relationship with. You have created memories together. You've had holidays. There are pictures. There are events that you've shared. You have sentimental tokens. You have pictures of history with them. But when the loss comes from a miscarriage, then that relationship has largely been internal and in imagination and hopes and dreams for the future. This requires creativity and imagination in terms of then how do you grieve. Many women and families have found it important to journal or to write letters to the baby. Some plant trees or establish gardens. Some start charities. Others have a very personal routine that serves them, where others have very public routines that serve them in honoring their loss. Some people hold the pain in their hearts, but with reflection. October 15th, Wave of Light involves lighting a candle at 7 p.m. local time. The goal of this is to wrap the world in a beautiful hug of light to support pregnancy and early infant loss awareness. Check your local area to see if there's an event that you might wish to attend, and know that there's also many that are being held online that you can attend from the privacy and security and safety of your own home. You may also wish to light candles at 7 p.m. your local time and invite people who love and support you to also light candles in their own home and to send you pictures so that you can have proof of their support and care for you. October 15th, Wave of Light begins to illuminate silent loss. If you have found this video helpful, please like it with the thumbs up down below so that YouTube will know to share it widely during the month of pregnancy and early infant loss awareness. If you yourself have experienced the grief of miscarriage, then I extend to you kind thoughts, kind words, and a kind heart. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again. Take care.